Welcome to Selling in the Motor Trade, in association with Automotive Management and Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips, and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. And firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in.
So I think the concern I have around the entire process is if the customer starts to become better informed around the potential negative impact of what we've seen, then they're going to start to worry about residual value.
Yeah.
And if they start to worry about residual value, then again, the onus is on us to try and take that worry away to support the industry. And obviously, again, as an insurance company, that's exactly what we're doing. We're creating a residual value guarantee.
Sorry, so did you say residual value guarantee?
Absolutely.
So how does that work? Sorry, are you talking about on a PCP, what the guaranteed minimum value of the car?
Yeah, so so think about it two ways. If you're a finance company or leasing company, then you set a residual value on the vehicle and you hope that you've got it right and that stays as a liability. But if somebody can take the liability away and give you a guarantee against that value, then your balance sheet looks slightly different. Same with the customer. If I said you buy a car today, then the value of that car is going to be determined by the auction prices or what people are prepared to pay for the car in 4 years' time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But luckily, today, there's an independent guide that sets future residual values. Mm. So if the independent guide says the future residual value should be X, but your car only achieves Y and there's a gap, then we'll cover the gap.
Right, okay.
It's a slightly different way of thinking about it. I think it's of a value to the customer.
I've not heard of that product before. So, and that is UAE, is it UK, European?
UK first, then we'll take it to other markets where the data is rich enough to support product proposition. Mm. But this existed some years ago. I think when I was in GE around 97, 98, when PCP started to get hold of the market off the back of red carpet and Ford options. Yeah. This product existed, and most of your finance companies were buying a residual value guarantee. Okay. It just disappeared from the market, and I think it's time for it to come back.
Okay. So is this FCA regulated? Are we talking about salespeople selling this? Are you saying, forgive me, I'm being a bit thick on this product because I'm not.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think, firstly, it's a guarantee. So the reality of it is that if you're a finance company and you're mitigating a risk, then you're the beneficiary. Okay. So FCA regulated products tend to be where there's a customer involved rather than a business to business.
So it's the business that's really protecting themselves. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. So that'll be our focus. Our focus will be to support businesses, leasing companies, finance companies with this type of proposition to mitigate that open-ended risk.
Yeah. So it's not the salesperson saying, by the way, Mr. Customer, you need a guaranteed minimum future value and you need I was just worried it's kind of like hiring that car again, Steve, and saying you got insurance, but do you want insurance on the insurance? But really,
as salespeople, we work on positives.
Yes.
So to tell the customer you potentially got a negative, but I've got a way to fix that.
Yeah,
I don't think it'll land that well, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
there'll be some people that'd like to sell it, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it's really the business to business to protect them. Interesting. Interesting. Now that sounds like we're talking doom and gloom here, and I hope people listen to this podcast on the way to work, make it to work. I want to turn around and be a bit more positive now. Okay, it's like the old hot dog story for the people who've heard that one before. But while we're getting there, let's talk about EVs and the challenges EVs are going to have on after sales. What are our technicians going to fix? What impact it's going to have on the dealership's profitability? What the dealer needs to do now to get on top of it. Again, EVs, something I've heard just today. I didn't realize that the lithium in the lithium-ion batteries The biggest supplier of this lithium in the world is, I heard it was China. Australia, we dig a bit of it out of the ground apparently, but in Europe, it was Ukraine. So I thought, goodness me, I didn't realize that at all, because I knew wiring looms. Well, actually, Steve, I didn't realize wiring looms until about, what was it, four months ago, something like that. Yeah. But now it's the lithium ion comes from Ukraine as well, from my understanding on something I read. I want to get your views on the whole, how the EV side of it is going to change or affect the dealer.
Okay, well, firstly, obviously, we don't want anybody to think that this is a doom and gloom.
Yeah, please don't. Yes.
You know, for me, this is about trying to understand and predict the consequences of cause and effect.
Yeah.
So cause being change, effect being how do you manage it? And I think it's the same with EV. So you're absolutely right. Ukraine is a massive supplier. Mm-hmm. Afghanistan was also a massive, and still is a massive supplier.
Afghanistan as well. Okay.
Yeah, obviously that's why maybe China got so friendly with them when obviously things changed. Yeah. So you've got certain markets that are key producers of these products. And as we know, we're still in the early part of this journey with EV. Mm-hmm. So in terms of batteries are changing all the time. You know, you look at somebody like Geely, who own Volvo. Geely invested billions of dollars creating the next phase of EV battery. So whereas before we always used to see the Tesla with a full floor pan full of batteries, and they look pretty much like a AAA battery.
It does, yeah.
Now it's actually starting to look a little bit more like a large suitcase that you can plug into, and that's the battery. And surely as we go further forward, that'll reduce in size again. So the weight issue will be to be mitigated. I think the repurposing of lithium batteries is going to be the next challenge. People are looking at this in different ways. You know, people are starting to think about lithium batteries going into the farming industry, into the wind power industry, and then finally making their way to developing markets. So India has said, as these batteries get to a certain age, we are delighted to have them because our national grid doesn't serve every home. So these batteries can actually go to power somebody's property in the far reaches. So you're seeing this, the repurposing of batteries already started to be thought about. Battery warranty is now pretty much accepted by most reinsurers. So we haven't got a problem there. Mm-hmm. I guess it's the infrastructure. So I think that the big challenge is, firstly, we know today EV cars are still more expensive, pretty much just over the price of an internal combustion engine. Mm-hmm. And we've tried everything on the ICE product to reduce that gap. So the first thing is, obviously people have looked at hydrogen and hybrid vehicles, and I guess then we're into full EV. And I think with the subsidies the government are now putting in place, with the infrastructure that's starting to grow, we'll see more of these vehicles on the road. Will we be EV by 2030? We're not ready for that. The infrastructure, unless you actually spend a huge amount of money creating the infrastructure, we won't be there. So I can see an extension of that 2030 deadline by the government. Mm-hmm. And then I think then your question is the right question. When you think about the life cycle of the vehicle, the servicing of the vehicle, the servicing of an EV is very different than the servicing of a combustion engine. So the impact is certainly on the dealership and the workshop in terms of the margins that they can continue to command. Yeah. So the model's changing. Some might say it's a perfect storm with values and with shortage of supply. But I think the pandemic probably pushed the EV strategy out a couple of years.
There's another thing, definitely impact on the service department is something that our dealers are getting themselves ready for. Okay, and they really do need to do that. Something else I think the OEMs are going to struggle with On one day, I drove 3 EV vehicles, the Kia EV6, it's the Porsche Taycan, and it was a BMW, the iX4, was it, or something like that? Okay, and one of our clients in Dublin. So one day I drove these 3 vehicles, and my concern is an electric motor is an electric motor. A battery is a battery. And it might be my age now. I'm not the millennials or the generation X or Y, Z. I can't keep up with it. But they had no soul. And Steve, if I shut my eyes, okay, actually all 3 of those vehicles, I could have been in the same one. And I'm just thinking, okay, if someone wants that Porsche Taycan or it's an EV6, did it drive that much better than one or the other? Now, again, forgive me, every Porsche salesperson listening is saying, no, it's sensational. It's so much better than the e-tron. But for me, I think the challenge the OEM has is how do they make their product, the brand? People do buy brand. We know that. Let's look at Volkswagen Audi Group, what they've done. But I think the challenge is on EV, how to make sure we stand out from the crowd. That's going to be hard work for that OEM to get their head around, I think.
I think it's exciting times, to be quite honest with you. I'm looking forward to seeing some disruption in this space and some innovation. And I'll take you back a few years. In 2009, when I was sat in Dubai, we took the Fisker franchise.
Okay.
And the Fisker, Henry Fisker, created an electric vehicle. And the electric vehicle was 2 ton in weight. It was a big old thing. It was the Fisker Karma. So we took that franchise and sold that in the Middle East. So we're selling it into a hot country. This thing was great on the road. You drove this thing, it felt like you were driving a spaceship.
Tough sell, isn't it? Because wouldn't fuel be very cheap out there at 2009?
Well, yeah, it was. I think it was more about being a little bit different and being topical in terms of what you were doing. I don't think it was. I don't think in that market it was all about the environment. Let's say that.
Yes. Okay.
And I think the one thing that Fisker worked out quite quickly in the US is customers couldn't hear these cars, and pedestrians couldn't hear these cars on the road. So they put speakers down the side of the car, and they created an engine noise. And this engine noise you could hear through the speakers, but it wasn't an engine. It was just like playing a CD. Yeah.
Well, again, the Taycan, there's a noise. It's not a fake engine noise, but the people who drive the Taycan, you'll know this. You can have it where it's completely silent, or there's a bit of a noise, which is I want to call it an electric noise. It was better to drive with that on because you had to feel something was coming back, something for soul. So they're clearly working on stuff like that.
It's a challenge for me, Simon, because I am your petrol head. I'm your V8, V10. I've got to hear I've got to smell it, hear it, feel it.
And I wonder, I'm like you, exactly the same, Steve, but I just wonder, am I the dinosaur though? Because I'm getting older now, I'm 48 now. What are I've got a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, okay? EV, is that, now having said that, my 16-year-old, we went to Goodwood Festival of Speed, and he fell in love with the Porsche Singer, is it? And the electric just wasn't for him at all. So I think there'll still be people who love the soul of ICE, but hey, we're changing. We're absolutely changing.
I agree. And I think that, something that you'll probably come on to as a question, I can feel it coming, but that's what the manufacturers are seeing. The manufacturers know that they've got to now appeal to the 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Not to the 80-year-old, yeah?
Yeah, that's true. That's what they need to.
Where's the market going?
Talk about the manufacturers, and because we have to call them OEMs now, and that snuck up on me. I don't know when they started to be called OEMs. I tell you, this is a little confession. I was actually sitting at an NADA conference, and they talk about OEMs this, OEMs that. Steve, I had to Google what an OEM was, okay, because they were just manufacturers when I started in the business. But listen, there's lots of noise with OEMs about agency. Everyone's been talking about agency, and a lot of people listen to this podcast. We have lots of investors. Lots of people spent their own hard-earned money developing their dealer group, their dealership, and they're concerned about how the agency sales model is going to affect their investment, quite rightly. In fact, we know in Australia, people who listen to the podcast, Honda launched agency out there. I think they're one of the first. No, sorry, it was Toyota in New Zealand, I think, was one of the first to launch true agency out there. Honda did it. Mercedes dealers in Australia, 1st of January, they went live this year. And I believe that 95% of the dealers there are taking a class action out against Mercedes. In fact, I had someone that I was speaking to last week said the Honda Australia, the way that it went down was, again, people listen to this in Australia, it was almost disgusting what Honda Australia has done to some of the dealers out there. And I've had someone on the podcast actually use those words, okay? They've made lots of mistakes. I think it's the first time they've done it, and I'm sure they've learned from it. But I heard one person say that actually, you know what? One of the guys that has the agency model, they'd give it back if they could, because they just don't want it there. In fact, there was someone I spoke to yesterday, Steve, that's in the UK, their particular manufacturer, and this is a decent sized group. It's a name that you would be familiar with. I won't use their name. It wouldn't be fair at all to say, but their shareholder has turned around and said, right, I want a plan now to get rid of our OEM completely over all of our sites. And they're not a small dealer. Say, let's just look at used anyway. Now, I think they're wrong and a bit hasty, and I believe that probably the shareholder is just doing that to get their plans in place. So I want to open up that conversation about your views on agency. It seems that every manufacturer is going down that route. As opposed to Dale Wyatt from Suzuki UK has said, we're definitely not doing it. That's the only one I've heard have said we're definitely not. But can I get your views on agency and where we're going with it?
Well, firstly, agency's been around for a long time, so this is not a new phenomenon. The laws of agency differ country by country. So a good example, if you're in the Middle East markets and you have an agency agreement, it means that you have sole representation of the brand. It's very difficult for the OEM to remove that agency from that company. The company has to give up the brand rather than lose the brand.
Say that again. So if I'm Nissan, okay, and I apply an agency, are you talking about as a distributor, for example?
Yeah. So if Simon opens a dealership in Dubai and you've got Nissan, you've got to release the Nissan franchise, because if the franchise is taken off you without your permission, you can block the franchise going to somebody else under agency law.
Okay. So the agent has more power than the manufacturer on that.
They have absolute power of the agency agreement that they have with the manufacturer. It's a very, very different way that it's worded, and legally protects the agent more so, if in this point, than the actual OEM. I agree.
Am I getting confused then? Because that sounds like a distributor model we would see in the Irish market, for example. Am I getting confused on that?
No, I think it's because in most of these markets, what you find is the ownership of the family that owns the business are the importer, distributor, and retailer.
Yes.
Manufacturer doesn't tend to have as much presence or as much involvement in the journey.
Okay. Now,
a lot of the manufacturers or OEMs, and I should say OEMs, I almost feel it's the wrong word. I always feel I'm not being disrespectful, but I think the challenge we have is in the UK, each manufacturer is going to see agency law slightly different.
Yeah.
So if you're a multi-franchise dealer group, the chances are you could end up with 10, 12, 15. I think there's 33 franchises now, 33 different agency agreements that you've got to take through your legal team. And just think, if you are selling your business,
Yeah.
the reality is you've got 33 different agency agreements. You've got to get permission for change of control.
Mm-hmm.
Have you still got the same rights as you had before in terms of selling the business? Will the business be impacted in terms of the multiple against EBITDA that we're seeing today? I'm sure it would.
Yeah.
And then you've got to operationalize all of this. And I think the operationalizing is maybe one of the biggest challenges, because each OEM has a slightly different view. You know, some OEMs see the view of margins could go down as low as 4%, whereas today those margins are closer to 8% on a new car, maybe even higher, and I'm sure they are. So I think you're going to see a squeeze on margin. I think you'll still see a squeeze on standards. And a lot of the excuses, I have to use the word excuses, a lot of the rationale that's being played out to everybody is customers changed. We need to take the customer on the omni-channel digital journey. The customer is going to be a very different customer tomorrow than he is today. And you're certainly starting to see this play out again in other markets, where some of the products that we buy from a manufacturer on our vehicle are now becoming subscription based. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you saw it in the press, but BMW are now charging $18 per month for heated seats.
It's subscriptions, the next can of worms we can open up there, because it's they go hand in hand, agency and subscription, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And then you're cutting out the middleman. The reality is you're buying it directly from the manufacturer.
Is that not what the manufacturer wants? Is it not they want to own the customer? Now, you could argue that actually in the UK anyway, the manufacturer owns the customer anyways by the finance agreement, because the vast majority of people finance through their finance arm. You could also argue that agency, if you look at Volkswagen Parts, that works on agency anyway. Okay. You could argue that, hey, listen, with agency, if they just give me a handling fee, that's great. But my understanding of this is you've got true agency, then you've got non-true agency. Mike Jones mentioned the phrase before, where that dealer will have to advertise we're an agency, but you can still get a discount. Doesn't that take away from what they're trying to achieve anyway? So it's Simon Sinek always says, start with why. So why do they want to change to the agency model? What's the problem the manufacturer is trying to fix? And I think the problem they're trying to fix is they don't want their product discounted all the time and devalue their product. If that's the problem they're trying to fix, sorry, I'll cut you off there.
Yeah, I think you've answered your own question. I think the reality of it is that your manufacturer today needs customer ownership. They need the ability to standardize the cars more. So let's say at the moment you might have 10 different derivatives. Well, why don't you just make one derivative and then charge for services on that derivative on a subscription base? Mm-hmm. So whether you have a premium sat nav or you have a basic sat nav, the equipment's the same, the usage is the same, it's just the software that gets upgraded. Same with, and I'm going to be really silly, it could be a deployable tow bar. How often do you use your tow bar? Every time you deploy it, I'll charge you. So it could be even things like that. Yeah. So I think the manufacturer sees two things. Firstly, it is their brand. It's their product. And we all make a margin from selling their product. So the manufacturer knows that. The manufacturer obviously sees the customer as their customer. So they want to guide the customer through this branded experience. And the branded experience today is very much a digital experience that we're all hanging our hat on. So we're appealing to the guy who never goes in a showroom, who sits on his PC or sits on his iPhone and actually does all of his purchasing through an app. So you're seeing that the configurators, online configurators of vehicles have advanced significantly. You can now finance it without talking to anybody. And we know that for a lot of customers, if they get the ability to purchase and have the car delivered to their home, they won't ask for a discount. They only ask for a discount when the the bravado kicks in with the guy that stood in front of you. Yeah.
Or the salesperson's only way to close a deal is saying, "If I could, would you?"
Yeah, and we've all used that. We've all used that one line, and we've educated. We've devalued to a certain extent what was an RSP.
Yeah.
But I actually argue that that's probably been caused by other factors. So if you could get a fleet discount of 30% on a car, and you could get a 2% discount as a retail customer, those cars are still worth exactly the same amount of money in 2 years' time when they turn up on the used car showroom.
Cheeky question for you. Steve Faulkner today, would you buy a car dealership with your own money, knowing what's happening, the changes we're going to go through between now and 2030, as you said, some of the biggest change in the world? Would you invest your own money into that?
I think it's a tough question to answer.
It is a cheeky question, to be fair.
Yeah, I think if it was something that was more of a lifestyle product. So I'm a great fan of an AC Cobra.
Yeah, nice.
So if I could get the franchise for a product comes out of the States which looks like an AC Cobra, it's totally against the EV strategy, I know, because obviously it's that noise and that smell again. But the reality is, I'd love that product. It'd be great. And for the relatively small investment, I'd certainly be up for that. If you asked me if I was going to buy a franchise that was a mainstream passenger car product, then I think I'm in the same race as too many people that's got the same product that's not unique. And the manufacturer, if he wanted to, could cut my revenue chain quite quickly. So no.
Okay. It was a cheeky question, to be fair, but I thought I'd ask. And I have lots of clients asking me, is now the time to sell? Is now the time to get out? There's a great interview we had with David Manchester, some of the people will know. And again, David will say about the people thinking, is now the time? Now, having said that,
we've advised people on purchases in the UK. So we've advised companies out of Dubai purchasing companies in the UK, and they've been great purchases. And even the news today, although I won't share their name, again, they've been buying more franchises. So I think that there's still ability to make a good margin if you've got the right operational capability and the right scale, and also the right relationship with the manufacturer. So I think if you become important to the manufacturer, I think it can work. I think if it was a single franchise, I think you're kind of exposed a little bit. So I think scale is really important. So you're still going to see a lot of M&A activity. I still think you're going to see more and more companies out of possibly South Africa. There's a great model. A lot of South African companies have bought into the UK and made a really, really good business decision. But I think the interest will be in 2 years' time when things normalize and profits normalize. Will the multiple still be as high? Yeah,
I mean, EBITDA at the moment, can we really take into account the last 2 years of what since I'm 48 now, started when I was 17, what's that, 31 years in the business. I've never seen anything like this in my life in the motor trade. Now, I'd like to think when you're valuing a business, people realize that blip. And I'm sure valuing a business, well, how do you value that car dealership at the moment with that blip in there? I'm sure someone buying it wouldn't take that into account.
I think you've got to have a long-term view. I think you've got to have a solid used car business alongside a franchise business. And you've got to work really hard to hold on to your service customers and your body shop customers, if that's the market you're playing in.
Yeah, that's so true. And a little bit, this does sound doom and gloom, but I'm glad you said that before, and it's not. I think this is what people are, you're always looking to the future. What do you need to do to prepare your business to get it in the right way? And there's one thing I will say. Growing up, I had a whole lot of record collections. And I remember my mother phoning me from Australia saying, what do I do with all these records? I said, Mum, throw them out. You can't buy a record player. No one told me vinyl was going to come back. Then you look at the watches. I think the Swiss watch industry thought we're doomed now because of the quartz watch. Everyone's going to want a quartz watch. But I tell you what, that quartz watch, people still want that mechanical Swiss-made watch. And I still think that the manufacturers, I still think that there's going to be a place for not just subscription. People are going to want to own things. I think some people want to subscribe. It makes all the sense. If I lived in the middle of London and I just subscribe, okay, I can have a convertible in the summer and I can have a four-wheel drive in the winter, and I'm going up to see grandma in Scotland. It makes all the sense in the world. You get some people like myself, my car is an extension of my office. It would never make sense to me, but I think it'll be interesting to see the change. And you hit the nail on the head for me. Between now and 2030, there's going to be lots of disruptors, and that's the opportunity, isn't it?
It is, and I think we never stop learning in this industry. It's a great playground. Yeah. I remember as a young lad looking at a Ford Sierra Cosworth RS. Yeah, and thinking, what a great car! I'd love that car. And they couldn't sell them. They were £9,000, and they were just too much money, and people didn't want to pay that much money for the car. Today, we've seen one go through auction, £143,000. Now, okay, it's unprecedented. It's not real. The reality is it's a one-off. But I saw a picture the other day, and it was of somebody who bought a load of Land Rover Defender counties. And they're just in this massive warehouse with plastic on them. And I guarantee you those cars will fetch more money today than they paid for them maybe 10 years ago. Yeah. So you're going to see the same thing. If you're going to go out and buy that nice big V8 and everybody's driving an EV engine, as long as you can still find some petrol, it's going to be
that's true. That's an. I was going to say if Boris changed that, but people will listen to this later. This is just after Boris's change, and people not listening to the UK, that might not make sense. Well, sure, I'm sure they've heard about Boris around the rest of the world. Okay, but let's see what the government says in 2030. Can we buy petrol? I'm sure we will. So listen, again, another cheeky question. Steve, you own a dealer group. You've got 20 odd dealerships. Okay. What are you going to focus on for the next 2 years? Okay. If you just say, right, what am I going to focus on? And you can do anything you want now. It can be, I'm going to focus on get my business ready to sell to the Pendragon's Virtues of the world. I can get ready to get rid of all my manufacturers and turn them into used car operations. I can get my salespeople focused on retention. What would you be focusing on as Steve Faulkner to get your dealer over the next couple of years?
Well, we all know it costs a lot more to find a new customer than to retain a new customer. So I think it costs 7 times to find somebody than to retain somebody. So retention is an absolute play. We've got to find a way to make that customer's life easy to become a customer. So make it so easy that they feel that they are in control to buy from us rather than us selling to the customer. So we should be supporting and advising, not selling. So it's a slightly different way of looking at things, giving the customer the control of the sales process. I think the digital journey, we have to be digital because digital is convenience.
Yep.
And I think what we've also got to do is we've got to standardize some of these processes. So when a customer calls up and says, I'm really interested in a car that you've got on the forecourt or in the showroom, then let's respond with a digital image, or let's respond with a video and say, thanks very much for your inquiry. I just thought I'd show you just how beautiful this car is on the interior because you asked me about the seating configuration. So to make it more personable, so the customer doesn't feel that they're actually talking to a salesperson. And I think that the challenge with it is when you talk to most customers about their journey, and you talk to customers about getting out of their car on the forecourt and walking into the environment, which is the showroom. For many customers who don't do it on a regular basis, that's quite overwhelming. So our job is actually to make it easy, to put ourselves on camera and to say, hi, Simon, it's Steve from ABC, just responding to your inquiry. which actually means when Simon comes in, he knows what Steve looks like and he can go and talk to Steve and actually say, "Hi, Steve, I'm Simon," which for salespeople might be a bit alien because it kind of takes them on the back foot.
Yeah, it's video. I remember video it's not the future, it's the now. And most of our people listening to this will see it now, WhatsApp and so forth. But one of the things I see all the time is salespeople just do the video on the car and it's a feature dump. And it's like, no, this is the best thing to sell yourself to start with. And I have a video I carry around with me. And it was in 2013, I believe it was, might be 2011. I just come back from the NADA conference, all excited about video and how that can change it. I think there was a lady called Jennifer Suzuki I seen at the time, or I can't remember. It was someone out there. And I was in a Nissan dealership on the South Coast. And I said, right, do this video. And I have it on my iPad because he'd done the video on my iPad. This is before See It Now, I believe, was doing it. Or if they're doing it, they were in their infancy, okay? And I got all excited about this video. And the salesperson, just honestly, it's one of the worst videos you'd ever see, Steve, okay? It's just really, really bad. You can't even work out what the car is. And bless him, it's his first one he's ever done, so I shouldn't knock him at all. And he sent it through to the customer and showed me the video, said, "Skippy, have a look at this. Look what I've done." I had my head in my hand and going, "Oh, no, you didn't do that, did you? You've not sent it to the customer." He said, "Oh, I've already sent it." I said, "Oh, okay." When I said this car's been in the workshop, one of our senior technicians has checked 145 points. What that means is an approved used Nissan. What that means is we can give you the same warranty on this car. That's what I meant. I didn't want you to say used car check. Okay, when I said a tire's got 8 millimeters on it, okay, this tire, when it's brand new, the car's still got 5 millimeters of tread, so you're going to get good life out of it. I didn't want you to say used car's been, tire's been serviced. How do you service a tire? That's, bless him, the lad actually said the tires have been serviced. How do you do that? Okay, I got egg all over my face because as I'm doing this, the customer emailed him back and said, "Wow, no one else has done that for me. I'll take that. It's exactly what I'm looking for." Okay. But here's the point. That was 2011, okay, or 2012, something like that. Now, everyone's doing video. So exactly what you said, the video has to be better. It has to be selling not just the car. It has to be selling the person. It has to be selling the dealership. It has to be saying, I still believe people like the idea that we're a family-run business, been going for 30 odd years. Okay, and the likes of Conley's, who are listening to this, 38 years, I believe, something like that. We're part of this dealer group. We're the biggest dealer group in Ireland. If they're part of Joe Duffy's, I believe, okay, or whatever their unique selling point is, because people buy not just the car, it's the person and where they're buying it from. That's where those videos need to be transitioned into selling the whole product.
Quite agree. We're quite lucky because we've also got the See It Now reseller agreement for the Middle East. So we represent Alistair and his team. And I think what they did quite early on is they got scale to a product that was kind of there to support the journey. I think they've now crossed 60 million videos. They're operating in 68 countries. So it's grown massively. We support a number of manufacturers and provide their video communication platform, whether it's in sales, body shop, workshops, web. We use video now for not just the service or just the show around the car, but we use video for vehicle check-in, to identify cosmetic repair damage, so an opportunity to upsell, to collect a vehicle and to drop a vehicle off, because there's obviously a lot of pickup and drop off over there. And we use video to display accessories that may be available, or a winter check. Although in the desert you don't need a winter check, but you need a tire check.
You do.
So we use video in different ways, and it's not just, I guess, the vehicle health check process. That's still there and it's still very important, but it's progressed on. So we're starting to see video being used for warranty claims, for motor insurance claims, It's just a different. Things are progressing quite quickly.
Who's that? Yeah, they definitely are. So listen, let me ask you then, I've enjoyed this conversation. I really have. We could go on and on. So what would you like to leave the listener to this podcast? What's your best tip or idea or something they could put in place immediately, almost now, and get a result? Any tip that you'd like to leave the listeners?
I think what I would do, well, firstly, I'd like to thank everybody. That's most important, because you've invested quite a lot of time listening to these dulcet tones from Stoke-on-Trent. I'm not talking about Simon. I think the second thing is you kind of have to look at the customer journey in your business. Now, a couple of years I invested in GE were around Lean Six Sigma. Mm-hmm. And one tool that I picked up and I've used so many times since is to map out the customer journey as if I'm the customer, to identify the non-value add or the waste and try and get rid of it. So if I'm doing things that add no value to the customer, I'm either doing them for regulatory purposes or operational critical to quality items. But outside of that, the entire journey should be a journey that everybody understands and understands really well, that everybody can demonstrate as a standard operating procedure, and they know where the value points are in that journey. Mm-hmm. And I think if you give everybody that map so they can actually act as if they're the customer and go through the process, and every market's different. You know, when I arrived in Dubai, and you're absolutely right, we'd ask the customer to sign 66 checks, deposit checks, 60 payments, 3 checks just in case he got his signature wrong. And
how long did it take the poor customer to do that?
Oh, and that was just the checks. You know, think about all the paperwork that went with it. So it was a very manual. It felt like going back 10 years, if not 20. Mm. But now things have caught up and the process is becoming more and more digital. Mm-hmm. So I think what we've got to do is we've got to think that your 16-year-old, and I'm not trying to classify everybody the same, but your 16-year-old and your 80-year-old could look exactly the same and they could look very different. And what we've got to do, and our job is to work out who they are, what they like, what they dislike, and we've got to work out how to protect them and the business. So whether it's through warranty programs, through the workshop, residual value insurance, if that's what we need to provide, that's what we need to provide. And driving that retention, you know, really focusing on holding on to your customer. Because at the moment there's less cars, which means there's less customers, there's less frequency in your workshop. So we've got to work harder to keep what we've got.
Steve, I've really enjoyed that conversation. How do people get hold of you? What's the easiest way for them to get hold of you?
Well, the easiest way is always LinkedIn. If everybody uses LinkedIn, I'm on there. So my contact details are on there. You'll find me under Automotive Solutions Group. Mm-hmm. So that's the easy way. The other way is just you can contact me at steve.faulkner@link365.me.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Simon. Thank you so much for having me on.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.